What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Week 10 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my BBOC co-host, Colin Wilson. What a slate we have from start to finish on Saturday. I also can't believe we're already at Week 10. What's going on, Colin?
I mean, it's been an interesting week of action. I guess I should ask, let's just touch on it real quick for 20 seconds before we move on to a huge loaded slate. Do you like Maction better midweek or do you like Conference USA? Because I don't know, maybe it's like something you've had for like 2 decades and you just feel comfortable with it. Like I feel so much more comfortable with Mac craziness than I do Conference USA.
Yeah, I love Mac. Cannot be surpassed. And the Conference USA, it's not been my strongest conference this season, but the MAC I spend so much time on, so it's always treated me well. And it feels like home when there's midweek action on. So yeah, it was a lot of sweats out there. Everything seems like it comes down to the wire. It's a beautiful, beautiful product.
You know what Conference USA doesn't have? They don't have like props. They don't have wheels. They don't have trophies to fight for. They need some props.
Yeah, there's not as much pageantry and history and shenanigans for sure. You also have the weather too in the MAC, which you don't have in Conference USA. So you'll get some winter wonderlands and snow and ice and all of that. So you can't
backward punts. Yeah.
It's good that Conference USA is doing it. It's like get more weekday games. You know, you're not going to go up against the big boys on Saturday. But speaking of Saturday, we're going to get to I think 20 to 25 games here. So let's get things started with a little quick look ahead or look away. All right, this is when we look at last week's schedule, next week's, see if there's any angle, if a team is, might have a potential letdown. We'll get to some others throughout the show, or if they're, caught maybe peeking ahead a little bit, they prepared more during the week, they might pull some starters a little sooner. Let's start Big Ten, Purdue at Michigan. Michigan has Penn State on deck. Big game in the Big Ten. I think right now the lookout line is Michigan -5.5, but first they will take on Purdue. Michigan is a 32.5 point favorite, over under 50.5. I think this line is too high just from a numbers perspective. So I would have a hard lean to Purdue, but I don't want any part of this Michigan team right now with everything that's going on. Like, how much did it really impact them? Every team does it to some extent. How many other teams are doing the same exact thing is another question I have. Also, like Michigan, they might just use this as a rallying cry. They just want to bury teams. We saw that against Michigan State. So, yeah, this is a pure stay away for me, even though Michigan has Penn State on deck. Do you have any feel in this game?
It's more of a fact-finding trip with the whole Connor Stallion stuff still coming out. We're finding him on the sidelines of Central Michigan with some recording Ray-Bans on his face. So it's a number that I make 28. More importantly, Jim Harbaugh 5-10-1 against the spread after a bye week since taking the Michigan job in 2015. But how do you back Purdue here? I mean, that was pretty bad loss last week. All of us a little bit lighter in the pocketbook. Purdue's lost 3 straight. Nebraska limited Purdue in scoring position. There was no methodicals or explosive against that Nebraska defense, and they only achieved 20% of available yards. That's not even half of the national average. I don't know how you put money down on Purdue and not cringe. So to me, this is more of a how often did Michigan get it right as far as knowing what Purdue is going to run. So it's not that I'm not going to watch this game. I might not bet it, but I'm definitely going to be watching it. And as far as a look ahead line, I've got it Penn State, Michigan -5 in favor of the Wolverines next week. So I don't expect the market to move much on that look ahead line.
Yeah, Purdue last week. I mean, look, there was 7 turnovers in the game. Nebraska only had 270 yards, but Purdue was under 200 yards. And that was a good matchup for the Purdue defense because their secondary was really slow. And you're playing, Heinrich Haarberg went 6 of 11 for 120 yards in the game. But now you're going up against a legit Heisman contender. And that we've seen this Purdue secondary get exposed against really good passing attacks, and their run defense isn't any good either. So it's going to be a tough ask for Purdue to get many stops here. But I think the line is a little inflated. I mean, this is a Michigan team that was minus 35 at home against East Carolina. As a data point, they were minus 31 against Indiana at home a couple weeks ago. I mean, Purdue's better than Indiana, so I think the line is a little high, but no interest in backing them. I do have interest in backing the other side of the coin in Penn State. So Penn State, before the Michigan game, will head down to Maryland. Penn State down to an 8.5 point underdog. I took a little better of a number early in the week if you follow me in the app, but I still would play this at 8.5. I just look, number one, yes, Penn State has Michigan on deck. It's their season. I think this is a good spot to buy low on Maryland. They've lost 3 straight. They gave a really good effort at Ohio State. Then there was a pick 6 and they kind of fell apart late. And then they were kind of doomed with some turnovers and close losses. I think there's a little hangover effect from that Ohio State game. But if you look at this game, I just don't trust this Penn State offense to blow anybody out. Yes, they were blowing teams out early in the season. They were getting a ton of turnover luck, and they were playing absolute corpses. This offense just has no explosiveness to it. No explosiveness to the run game, none in the pass game. It's just, I don't trust them to cover this number. You saw this last week against Indiana. I mean, you would think Penn State would bounce back. Nope, nothing. The offense is just dead. There's no one stepping up at receiver. Now you're down another receiver. And it's just an ugly offense right now. Maryland should have enough talented playmakers, the better quarterback in this matchup. So I think Maryland's going to give Penn State a scare. I like the Terps over a touchdown. Do you agree?
I agree that I think there's going to be points in this game, which means Maryland needs to do their part. I do project this above 55. I know it's 50.5, 51 as we're recording this. Mike Loxley on James Franklin this week. We have a great working relationship, but I wouldn't say that we text Merry Christmas to each other. If you throw out the pandemic season, which I always do with stats, Penn State has beaten Maryland all 5 times since they played each other, with a scoring differential of 224-20. It's been pretty lopsided. Maryland's lost 3 straight here right now, scored 68 total versus Northwestern, Illinois, and Ohio State. So you're going to ask them to score their share here to get this cover and to get over this total. And I think that they can. But the real factor why I kind of like the over here, Drew Aller took 6 deep shots against Indiana. He completed 3 of them for 2 touchdowns. Before the game, he had attempted just 15 passes over 20 yards, completing 4 of them. Literally 40% of his bombs this year came against Indiana. Is this just something that we're now trying out before we get to Michigan? It's shocking to me that all of a sudden we waited until Indiana to get that far down the field. So I like points in this one, but Maryland's got to do their part, and I think they will.
Yeah, there's other things, but there's issues with this Penn State offense that just aren't Aller not living up to expectations. It's the receivers. Now you have Harrison Wallace, who's out, and he was in a sling last week, and just no one else besides Lambert Smith to step up. They've lost a ton of NFL talent. That was the question I had coming in here. Hasn't happened. The interior offensive line is a mess, and that's impacting the run game. It's impacting Aller when he drops back. And there's also the fact that Chop Robinson, who's probably a first-round draft pick for Penn State off the edge, didn't practice today. I don't think he's going to play. And that's a big, big loss for the Penn State defense. He can wreak havoc, and there's a big drop off to his replacement. So, yeah, I think Maryland can keep up. Penn State's also been lucky in turnovers. I mean, what are they, second in the nation and number 1 in turnover margin. So there could be some negative regression there. I like Maryland. Don't mind your over, although Penn State overs make me cringe. Another one, Florida State. They have Miami on deck, trying to remain undefeated, top of the class at the ACC, and in position for a college football playoff berth. They first will travel to Pitt. They are laying over 3 touchdowns here. I mean, this number is a bit inflated to me, but I don't think I can I don't think I can. And look, Florida State's been inconsistent at times. I would lean Pitt here on the spot there. Pitt was embarrassed last week. Florida State with Miami on deck. It's a great situational spot. Didn't make my spots piece because I don't know where this Pitt team is at mentally. You have Narduzzi coming out with some bad comments, players taking to social media. So Pitt is the spot, little inflated of a number, in my opinion, but I don't think I want to throw any more money behind these Panthers. Got them in their spot with Louisville. So this is a pass.
There's some money that came in on Pitt today, driving it down to 21 at one of the sharper shops out in Vegas. So I would be entertained in Florida State at 21, but Pitt's on corpse watch. I mean, it's tough to make a case after getting boat raced by Notre Dame, and Notre Dame didn't have a single methodical drive against them, which is defined as 10 plus plays in a drive. They had 4 explosive drives out of the 12 that they had. Offenses, it's just been such a struggle for this Pitt offense, especially quarterback Christian Veyer had 4 interceptions. They had 23% success rate and 34 passing attempts. Pitt is nearly the worst passing offense in the nation. They're dead last in quality drives on offense. And defensively, this team is 133rd in broken tackles allowed. I think the broken tackles allowed, when I bring that up, I think that's more of like, do you care anymore? Because obviously that's where arm tackles come in and they don't get the job done. And when you rank 133rd on a Narduzzi defense, that is really saying something. Norvell, will he want to run it up or to stay in the good graces of the committee? Does he want to keep Jordan Travis in the hunt for the Heisman? I know he was asked a lot about the weather. It's not going to be an issue. High 50s at kickoff, wind under 10 miles an hour. He said it'll be more of a problem for the media than anybody else. I think Florida State's going to get it done here. I would just like to get the best of the number 21. I do project it like 19.5. So obviously would like to get, I think the numbers guys are probably going to scoop Pitt at 21.5. And it's probably a bad decision considering, like I said, Pitt's on corpse watch.
Yeah. Another one, Utah. This is a tough spot for Utah. They get blown out by Oregon, pretty much out of any race now. They have Washington on deck, but first they will host Arizona State. Arizona State also, that's not the best spot. I mean, they went up to Seattle, should have beat Washington, come home, beat Washington State, right? Like 3rd straight big game on the road at Utah. I've been riding this Arizona State team every week. I'm in love with the Arizona Pac-12 schools. We'll get to Arizona later. This isn't the best matchup for Arizona State, though, because that Utah should be able to run it. Like the Arizona State secondary is really good. They can get pressure. Rice Eccles, bounce back spot. So I'm a little afraid of Arizona State here. Might finally avoid the Sun Devils now that this line. I mean, if it opened, I think the Lookahead was like 4, if it was over 2 touchdowns, I would play Arizona State 11.5. I'm not going to fade my beloved Sun Devils, but I think I'm finally jumping off the train for now.
Arizona State is the side I would play. I'm more interested in the under here. This is only the 3rd game for Kenny Dillingham on the road. He easily covered against Washington in week 8, 12.5 point spread against, and they had a 3-point loss against Cal in week 5. So they covered that 12.5 against Cal easily. So, Dillingham on replicating the Washington result with Utah, he says, we went into a bubble. We made ourselves deaf for 5 days. That's what we have to do when we take on Utah, which is the gold standard of college football, wanting to be physical and efficient. And the rushing attack of Cam Skatebow and DeCarlos Brooks led the charge in scoring 38 against Washington State last week. The offense 64% success rate in rushing attempts. So, against Washington, they were 68% success rate in running the ball on 31 attempts, dominating the time of possession 37 to 23 minutes against the Huskies. So that's been the formula. Why everybody's waking up to Arizona State is because they've been so dominant in running the ball. You go into Utah's schedule and you see who they've gone against, like who can do that to the Utah defense. The one team that has a big ground-based attack that did embarrass Utah was Oregon State. They have a much tougher strength of schedule, a lot of things we could talk about, but really it's the Oregon State defense, the Oregon State offensive rushing attack that did that. It was tough. I mean, Beavers 4.6 yards per play on the ground. They were stuffed on half of their 33 attempts. Where they had success was Silas Bolden, like running all over the place, sideline to sideline, doing crazy things in the back. It wasn't just like they lined it up to Damian Martinez or they let, DJ run an RPO and that's what burned them. It wasn't. It was really like some crazy sideline to sideline Silas Bolden type stuff. So I'm not sure if Arizona State can just line up with their 2 running backs and mow them over. I like the under here. I don't really see an avenue on either side of the ball for these guys to score a whole ton of points.
Yeah, I don't mind the under either. All right, before we get to our marquee matchups, as a reminder, the BBOC podcast presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get to our marquee matchups of the weekend. We are going to cover 5 games in depth. Then we'll get to the rundown, which will cover 7 more. I'll get to some trash. We have a lot to get to. So let's start in the SEC, where a surging 7-1 Missouri team will travel to Athens to take on a still undefeated Georgia Bulldogs squad, sitting at 8-0 on the season. Georgia's a 15.5 point favorite here, over under 56.5. Missouri is coming up situationally decent spot for Missouri, coming off a bye. Georgia's off of that Florida game, but obviously this is a really tough place to play. That Georgia team seems to be finding its stride and knows when to turn it on. And, you know, this is a huge game in the SEC. I mean, Missouri, they win out, probably going to the college football playoff. Depending on what happens with other teams.
You got some of that 300-1 on them to win the national title? I had some questions about this. Like, no, I don't think we're going to do that.
I did not. But maybe people maybe not have seen Missouri play this year. I mean, maybe they saw them against LSU. They did give up 49. They took care of business against, you know, Kentucky, South Carolina. They even beat Kansas State on I think that was on the 62-yard field goal at the end. They struggled early in the year, but just to give people a quick high-level overview of Missouri, if you're not too familiar, offense is very good with Brady Cook. Early in the season, they weren't really throwing it downfield. I think that just had to do with quality competition. They since have, and the offense has really benefited. Theo Weiss, Brady Cook, Theo Weiss and Mookie Cooper are really nice compliments for Luther Burden, who's one of the best wide receivers in the country. The offensive line is all pretty good in pass blocking, except for right guard Cam Johnson, but they're still struggling to get a consistent rushing attack, which I think could hurt them here. They're going to have to go to the air, right? Like, I don't think they're going to get much on the ground against Georgia. And then they have a death row defense. That's what they call it. They have really good corners in Rakestraw, who's now back. He missed a couple games. Drain and Norwood. Good linebackers on paper in Hopper and Chad Bailey, who's one of the best in the SEC. But Chad Bailey, I think, is going to be out for this game. And that's big. He's one of their best pass rushers from the linebacker spot. And they're very good against the run, one gap scheme, very disciplined one gap scheme. Like, you can't really run much on them, and their linebackers clean up a lot, but they don't get a ton of pressure naturally, and their safeties are bad. So they give up because they're not getting pressure and your safeties are bad, even though your corners are good and can cover, it leaves you vulnerable to explosive plays, which has been a major issue for the Missouri defense. So without Bailey, he might play, but I don't think he is. It's a big loss. You got to generate some pressure and then create some chaos. Otherwise, this defense, even though I like the corners, they just can't hold up because the safety play has been so bad. And the linebackers aren't great in coverage either. So that's a quick summary on Missouri. I'm pretty close to market here. So I don't have anything, but I think you do. What do you see here?
I feel like a broken record. I think this is the 3rd or 4th week in a row I'm taking an over in a Georgia game. I mean, to me, it's so clear cut with this. And I'll start with the side of Missouri since you started there. Like, you remember it was like 6 weeks ago, we were like, what is this Kirby Moore offense? Like, are they holding things out? Because it was such a...
Yeah, they just weren't throwing downfield at all.
They weren't throwing downfield, and they had all the weapons in the world. But now we've seen those weapons, and you mentioned Luther Burden. He's the best slot in the nation. The number 2 slot in the nation used to be the guy who used to play that for them, who's now playing for Georgia. But when you look at Brady Cook, he's effective throwing in 10, 11, 12 personnel. He's got 20 big time throws to 7 turnover worthy plays. Luther Burden being the biggest threat in the slot. Teams can attack Georgia on the ground, not through the air. So I got a little bit worried. I wanted to take Missouri at 18.5, 17.5, because I power rate this thing around 2 touchdowns, but I just couldn't do it because of some of the things you mentioned. But once I looked at what Georgia does on defense, they run quarters, they run cover 3. Both of those are the highest success rate in EPA that Brady Cook has had all season. At least 20% of snaps against quarters and cover 3 have been explosives for Missouri this year. Georgia's 5th in coverage grading, and they're 10th in on target allowed. So that's really, Missouri's going to be able to get it downfield. They're going to be able to get themselves into scoring position and get points up. But I think it's going to be critical about what they do in the red zone against this defense, whether they can cover. So I didn't even want to mess with the cover. They're going to get their points. Go to the other side. Carson Beck is getting better week after week. I mean, I'm not trying to scare you into thinking you're going to have to eat a shoe. I'll mail you one that's real nice, old and leathery and, tastes terrible. But Carson Beck is getting better. He loves to throw against cover 1 and cover 3. He has a better EPA versus cover 1 and cover 3. His big play rate is 26%. That's huge. Missouri is 76th in coverage. You named it. They are leaky in defense. They are leaky in scoring opportunities. They're 69th in quality drives. Teams are getting down the field. They're 99th in finishing drives. Teams are finishing up with points, usually over 4 points per trip. So the biggest handicap in this game is the slots. Luther Burden versus former Missouri Tiger Dominic Lovett, who has taken over all those short crossers and slants that has left for the Brock Bowers is not a part of anymore. Now, Tyke Smith is going to draw Luther Burden when it comes to Missouri on offense. That's good on good. It's definitely a battle to watch. But Dylan Carnell drawing Dominic Lovett. Carnell has been targeted 43 times. He's allowed 29 catches playing slot corner, 8.2 per when he's been targeted. So it's not a good matchup for Missouri on defense whatsoever. So both offenses are going to have problems establishing the rush. They're both going to be above success rate and EPA when they're throwing the ball. I love the over here. I took it at 54.5. It zoomed through 55 this morning. I put it in the 60s. I put it at 61. So go ahead. 59 is the next key number. But Georgia tried to cover the total all by themselves last week. Carson Beck just has too many advantages and explosives here with Dominic Lovett in the slot. So over all the way here. I think Georgia, the spread is probably a toss-up. I might stay away from it.
Yeah, I think both teams are going to go pass heavy here. I mean, I think Missouri, the only fear would be is if Missouri tries to ugly it up like their previous matchup with Georgia. But I think that would be very, very, a very, very stupid approach because their weapons are on the outside. Their running game hasn't been there.
Yep.
And so I think there's going to be a lot of just pass heavy attacks. And that Georgia knows how you attack this Missouri team is through the air. So that would certainly favor the over. All right, let's move on to Bedlam, the final edition of Bedlam in Stillwater. I have, where's my press? It's sat in a box. Boom Pickens 2015. I went there when I had an Oklahoma future. It was amazing atmosphere. This is the last one, which is kind of sad. One of the things that is going to come of conference realignment that I don't think any college football fan likes. But Oklahoma is a 5.5, 6-point favorite here, over under 61. So Oklahoma's been exposed. They played cupcakes early in the season. They got that Texas win where they were pretty fortunate. Red River rivalry. These things are always going to be wild, but their defense has been exposed ever since that game. Right outside the top 100 in a number of metrics over the past few weeks. Danny Stutzman might be out too. He's big,
huge.
He's an ankle injury. This Oklahoma State team is, and look, the Oklahoma running game's not there. There's offensive line issues. The wide receivers aren't that talented, and they are missing Andrew Anthony who was their leading receiver. He's out for the season. So Gabriel's been great, but this team is not as good as some people thought. And they were exposed the past 2 weeks. Could have lost to UCF, lost to Kansas. I show some value in Oklahoma. Now this is under a touchdown, but I'm not betting Oklahoma because I don't know. I just can't catch up to Oklahoma State. So right. Oklahoma State, this is one of the most shocking turnarounds I've seen in college football. This is a team that early in the season they got their doors blown off at home to South Alabama. They were in a fight with Central Arkansas at home. And then they come out of the bye, and their offense has been a juggernaut. And what has happened? I'll explain to people because it was very confusing to me. So number one, they stuck with one quarterback. They were going with three: Gundy's son, Rangel, and then Alan Bowman. They stuck with Alan Bowman. Consistency, right? Consistency, reps, running with the ones. And then they also started feeding Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon, over the last 5 games, Gordon's averaged 8 yards per carry, rushed for nearly 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns on the ground. Against West Virginia and Cincinnati over the past 2 games, 282 and 271 with 6 touchdowns. Now, so Ollie Gordon, early in the season, they weren't giving him the ball. He's one of the best running backs in the country. What has that done? And by the way, it's not just all Ollie Gordon. They, got Jake Springfield, was one of their best offensive linemen, back from injury at right tackle. That enabled them to move Dalton Cooper from right tackle to left tackle. He's a transfer from Texas State, with really good transfer. Played 4 years there. Always played left tackle, was struggling at right tackle. Able to move him to left tackle. What did that do? That enabled them to kick Cole Birmingham into left guard from left tackle. He's better suited there. This offensive line now, everyone's in place. It's all fifth-year seniors. It's massive. And early in the season, it was a mess. Offensive line set, give the ball to Ollie Gordon. He's taking advantage. And then because of that, because this run game is just a machine, it doesn't matter. Teams are loading the box, trying to stop it. They can't. What has that done? Play action. So wide receivers aren't great, but now it's setting up the play action pass game, easy throws for Bowman, and the whole offensive operation has done a complete 180. The Oklahoma State defense is okay. Colin Oliver and Nicholas Martin are one of the best linebacker duos in the Big 12. There's some good cover corners, but the defensive line and the safeties aren't great, so you can run on them a bit. You can hit some explosive plays through the air. They've been lucky with turnovers on defense the past few weeks. Like, everyone's turning it over. They're getting defensive special team scores. But I also have to give credit to Brian Nardo, who people clowned Gundy for hiring him. He's made some great halftime adjustments, did it against Cincy last week again. So the question is, can Oklahoma take advantage of this defense? I think they should be able to score here. They're going to go fast. I think they're going to be a little bit more aggressive after last week. But their defense, especially if Sussman's not there, I don't know. This Oklahoma State team's rolling. I can't back Oklahoma State because my numbers can't get there. And this is the last bedlam too. But I also can't back Oklahoma because this Oklahoma State team, it's very hard for me to go from where I was to like adjusting them up enough to get here. But they just might be way better than I've been adjusting for. What do you see here in the final edition of Bedlam?
I agree. I mean, I power rated 7, so you're kind of taking a leap of faith if you want to back the Cowboys. But if you're backing Oklahoma, how comfortable do you feel? Probably not that comfortable. And some things that you didn't mention, cash your tickets on Media Day. But when I was at Media Day, Gundy got up in front of everybody and talked about, and all the questions were on Nardo, right? You went and got a guy from Gannon University he's like, hey, he knows the scheme that we run. He runs the same thing. I did my homework. I know what we're getting, quit asking me about it. And, that was all the talk. And then when he came off the side, and Brett and I got him off to the side and started talking to him one-on-one, all my questions were on the run concepts and the blocking concepts, going from gap, zone. Oh yeah, the offensive line is completely changing the way that we block. When you go and look at what Oklahoma State has done on their offense from a rushing perspective, something just clicked around game 4, game 5. It finally clicked, and now they're just hammering people from rushing the ball. But I'm going to start.
Yeah, they went to Gordon. The offensive line got healthy. Everyone to natural position. They changed the scheme, more zone-based, and then it took off, and then that enabled the passing attack even with bad receivers, just because it's play action, right? Yeah. So everything changed.
And so for that reason, that's one of those things where, Mr. I think, what does everyone like to call me on Twitter and our voicemails, nerd? I have to step out of my Excel sheet and my numbers and realize that there's a lot of things going on here that you can't quantify with the Cowboys. I'll say a couple things about the Oklahoma offense. Tubby Walker is expected to return to the Sooners backfield. I don't know if that's going to help them run the ball. I mean, OU created just a single rushing gain over 40 yards the entire season. There is no explosiveness out of this run game for the Sooners whatsoever. And Dylan Gabriel's 1-to-1 ratio of big time throws, turnover worthy plays, not going to win the Heisman. 85th in pass explosives. Andrew Anthony's hurt. I get it, but these problems were going on way before that. So, when you go to the other side of the ball, when you look at Oklahoma State's offense, there's a couple of key things that you need to keep in mind. Because yes, I have put a bet in the app on Oklahoma State, but it comes with a contingency. Ollie Gordon accounts for 40% of this Oklahoma State offense. That's insane for a running back. For a quarterback, fine. For a running back, it's pretty insane. The only handicap that should be in this game is, can you stop Ollie Gordon? So when you look at that, he averages 4.7 yards after contact. After contact, he's gaining another 5 yards. He's top 10 nationally in missed tackles forced at 43. So he does this all the time. Now, what do you need? You need a defense, doesn't miss tackles, doesn't have broken tackles. The first guy to get to him is the one that tackles him. Well, you know who that guy is on the defense? Danny Stutzman. And when he went out of that game against Kansas, I knew I was screwed. I knew that I was going to get a lot of tweets from you. I was going to get a lot of texts from pissed off people, like everything. Like I knew that Oklahoma's in deep trouble without Stutzman, because this goes back to what I've been saying for years with Venables. He has to have a middle linebacker that's a captain that goes out on the field, relays the plays, lines up the defense, calls out the audibles. Like, it is an assistant coach and Venables defense that plays middle linebacker. Stutzman is that guy. If he's not playing, which right now at this second as we're recording, game time decision, it means everything in the world to me in this bet. If he's playing, you might see me get out of it. If he's not, we're riding the Cowboys here. But one thing I'll leave in this, you want to know how important Danny Stutzman is? He has an 8.5% missed tackle rate, right? I'm not going to say whether that's good or bad. It's actually average. It's all right. 8.5% missed tackle rate. If you look at all the leading tacklers out of the Oklahoma defense, linebacker Jaron Kanik, safety Billy Bowman Jr., a couple of others, they have missed more than 25% of tackles. It is unbelievable how bad this defense is at missed tackles. The one who's not, Danny Stutzman. To me, Danny Stutzman is the most important linebacker to a point spread in recent history that I could ever think of. So, yeah, the bet's in on Oklahoma State. Stutzman means everything in the world to whether I let this ride.
Yeah, he just makes so many plays from behind the line of scrimmage, too. He's all over the field and is the quarterback of that defense. Let's stay in the Big 12 and let's head down to Austin. The Big 12 standings right now, 5 teams tied at the top of the leaderboard at 4-1. Just talked about Oklahoma State. One of those teams will be knocked from the top. You have Iowa State, who, by the way, I think beats Kansas. Good spot under a field goal. They're in first place somehow. Their offense is really turned around, similar to Oklahoma State. Really young group that is gelled at the right time. Tough spot for Kansas here off that big win. And I think the Iowa State defense will step up. But elsewhere, so I think Iowa State's going to be in first place, along with the winner of Oklahoma State, and then the winner of Texas, Kansas State. Texas will once again start Malik Murphy at quarterback. It's very hard for me to get a read on this Kansas State defense. Kind of got carved up a little bit against a really good Missouri offense. They shut down Houston. Just completely dominated them last week. But Houston just has these efforts where you never know. It's Dana. They played a lot of other backup quarterbacks, so it's hard for me to get a read on the defense. I don't think it's an elite unit by any, but I'm not sure Malik Murphy can take advantage. Last week, underwhelming performance. He was efficient at times. He wasn't really throwing deep that much. He had a pick where there was a miscommunication, like what you would expect from an inexperienced quarterback. There was a miscommunication on a rush snap, and he should have thrown it away or ran with it. He also had a fumble when, a running back and offensive lineman ran into each other. It wasn't all his fault, but these are the mistakes you're going to get. And they weren't really taking shots downfield. Maybe that's just because they were playing BYU. But I mean, if you just look at the route tree of Worthy, nothing was downfield at all. Everything was dink and dunk. So it's hard for me to get a read on what Murphy is. He's a rocket arm, a lot of touch, but you're going to get some mistakes here. Kansas State, on the other hand, they want to run the ball. It's what they want to do. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to run it on Texas. This Texas D is legit. This one, this is tough for me. Kansas State's a juggernaut. They're rolling of late, but they benefited from some backup quarterbacks, some good matchups. And then now you get another backup quarterback with Texas. Texas, by the way, is a 4-point favorite over under 49.5. What do you see here?
This one was a Texas-Kansas State first half under and a slight lean to Kansas State here. So let's talk about the Texas offense first. Will scoring points be an issue? And it really has been all year. Texas averages 3.9 points on drives that go past the 40. Then it gets scary. I tweeted this out earlier in the week and people couldn't believe it. They're 120th in red zone touchdown scoring. For all the things that Sark is, and I love him, please don't unfollow me on Twitter. You're not doing too well in the red zone, 120th in TD percentage. That is not going to hold up against a Kansas State defense that's third nationally in defensive red zone TD rate. A lot of field goals is what I see, or maybe some stops. Malik Murphy saw a lot of cover 1 and cover 3 against a very poor BYU defense. Not sure how much we take away from that, but Kansas State doesn't run cover 1 and cover 3. They run strictly quarters, and they run that for a very good reason, especially this week. You're going to get double teams on Mitchell and Worthy while they're going to have a light box and they're going to dare Texas to run the ball. Now, Murphy had an adjusted completion rate drop of 30% when he had pressure last week. That's expected, right? I mean, brand new, first game as a starter. Joe Klanderman sends blitz on 31% of defensive snaps. They're coming after Malik Murphy. I think everybody else saw that when he has pressure, he tends to like try to throw a fastball as fast as he can. So that's probably going to be the game plan. We'll see how it works. On the other side of the ball, this is where things got interesting. Can Texas's defense stop the Kansas State rush? Because everybody knows Texas front seven did a great job against Alabama. They're one of the best rush defenders in all of the nation. They've been dominant against outside zone. Kansas State doesn't run outside zone. Kansas State runs pure inside zone. They run almost everything but it. They run inside zone, man blocking schemes, power, pulling offensive linemen, and counter. Texas defense has middling success or zero experience against these run concepts. They have almost zero experience against teams that use linemen that pull and against counter. So I'm like, it's like this black hole where I don't know what's going to happen because Texas's front seven is really good, but they have not seen these kind of run concepts before. Plus, let's add on to the fact that the few of these rush run concept types that they've seen have come out of 11 personnel. Kansas State doesn't run 11 personnel with this stuff. They run 22, 21, and 12. There's a lot of tight ends. It's a lot of running backs, and you have mobile quarterbacks that can run it too. So what I see in this game, low scoring start. Murphy's going to see quarters for the first time ever. Kansas State is going to run a bevy of run concepts that Texas defense is just, I don't know if they're going to move with the motion. I don't know if they're going to follow both tight. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they're athletic enough to keep up, but it's a lot to handle. So I see a very low scoring through the first few scripted drives of the game. I suspect there will be adjustments between Kleiman and Sark and the entire game, but Kansas State's advantage in running the ball, along with flashing quarters to Murphy, has me on Kansas State. It's not a huge play, but I'm on Kansas State in this game.
Yeah, I don't mind the under here. I might dabble there as well. And we'll be rooting for Texas for our Big 12 futures.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the SEC. So hopefully for your sake, Texas by 3, that works. But I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. A lot on the line for both teams. Might come out a little conservative. Texas defense, I think, will step up. I think Texas is going to run it and rely on their defense. LSU at Alabama. Let's go to the SEC.
Oh boy.
Got a big one here in prime time. It's the SEC Saturday night CBS game, the annual one. Alabama 3-point favorite over under 61.5. Major injury news to lead off with LSU. Their defense ravished by injuries. They're much maligned defense, which if you remove games against Army, Grambling, it's an Auburn who can't throw it. It's bad. The pass defense is bad. They're very talented, and against the teams that are way more talented that can't throw it, they can obviously stop the run. But their defense has major issues, and now you won't have Mekhi Wingo, who is your best run stopper in the middle, third-team All-American last year. He had surgeries out for the rest of the season. You also, look, before the season, LSU had to get a brand-new secondary. They went out and they got 4 transfer quarterbacks. They got J.K. Johnson out of Ohio State. He's, in the fall, he had surgery. He's out for the year. You got Deuce Chestnut, Denver Harris, Zy Alexander. They're all out. Some of them are hurt. Some of them are in the doghouse with Brian Kelly and just aren't going to play. That's confirmed. The secondary is a mess. The corner situation is a disaster. Alabama injury situation. Marshall, their linebacker, he missed the Tennessee game. He's questionable. Terrence Ferguson, he's missed over a month with an ankle sprain. Not a huge deal. And Terrion Arnold, their corner, he practiced after a concussion. I think he'll play. Bama offensive line hasn't been great. Latham's a monster. But left tackle Proctor, he's young. He's been bad. And their center, Seth McLaughlin's, he's really struggled. I don't really know what's going on with him. He was good last year. He has snap issues, penalty issues. His grades out poorly. So the Bama offensive line has been great. That's why, they're allowing a ton of pressure, there's a lot of missed assignments, a ton of tackles for loss. This is a really interesting game. The LSU offense is rolling, and it's good on good against the Alabama defense. But it's hard for me to see Alabama completely shutting down this LSU offense, which is just on another level right now. Now you go to the Bama offense. The way that I look at this is that with the corner situation, I think you just have to, dare Alabama to run it. Hope you get some stops. Hope you get some sacks, because you have some good pass rushers on third downs to get them behind the chains. Because how I see this playing out, I think LSU is going to win this game. Just my sneaky suspicion. The line is sharp, though. Like I wanted to bet LSU. Probably throw them in a round robin. But on the money line is very sharp here at 3. What I think is going to happen is this Alabama offense. I mean, look, it just goes into these funks because Milroe's so inconsistent. He's not the type of quarterback that's going to drop back, pick you apart, and pick a bad secondary apart because he's just too inaccurate. Even maybe against LSU where there should be guys wide open. And then he's going to take a couple sacks, right? And then all of a sudden, you're third and longs, you take some sacks. This offense goes into just a shell and it tanks for like a quarter or two. His deep ball, he's one of the best deep ball passes in Alabama history, one of the best deep ball passes in the country. He's going to hit a couple of them. I mean, everyone is against LSU. So he's going to hit some explosives. I think Alabama will have a ton of success running the ball, but I think they're just going to have, even though LSU's defense is so bad, I think they're going to have these just lulls as they've had all year. And I don't think you can afford to do that against LSU's offense. So there's major questions with this LSU defense, but I don't know if Alabama's offense can consistently take advantage. I'm curious to see how LSU plays this schematically. Like, do they take away the run, try to cover Alabama, knowing you're going to give up some explosives, but knowing that you're probably going to get some sacks and Milroe will be inaccurate, or you just sit back, let Bama run it down, try to stop them in the red zone, try to make a couple plays behind the line of scrimmage. Very interesting chess match, which will then determine the total, how LSU plays it, in my opinion. But I think LSU is going to win, but the line is very sharp. Probably throwing around Robin. What do you see here?
I took Bama -3. My handicap, I think, is different than everybody else in the world. Both of these I mean, I know it's easy to sit there and pick on the LSU defense. Trust me, I get it. And it's easy to pick on Jalen Milroe's decision-making. I get it. But to me, these two offenses run the same thing with the same type of quarterback principles. Let's start off with LSU running inside zone with Jaden Daniels. Now, Alabama defends it at a 59% success rate, which is extremely high, and they leave opponents with a negative EPA. So if Jaden Daniels is not able to run inside zone, he's going to pull it back. And who's he going to look for? Malik Neighbors on the slant immediately. Now, Alabama is 10th nationally in preventing rush explosives, so I don't expect anything to come out of the run game, but you have to focus on who's going to guard Malik Neighbors. Now, we mentioned Terrion Arnold. He's cleared concussion protocol last week to start practices. We assume that he's going to play in this game, but Malachi Moore also highly ranked in slot coverage. So Terrion Arnold, Malachi Moore, they play slot coverage. That's who's going to be on Malik Neighbors. Both of them rank within the top 100 of slot corners in all of PFF. So Alabama, I think, has got it covered. They're considered the number one graded coverage team of all PFF. They've got in the slot corners to handle Neighbors, and they have a 59% success rate in defending inside zone with Jaden Daniels. So I feel comfortable on that side for Alabama. When you go to LSU's defense, completely different story. 44% success rate in defending inside zone. That is terrible. PFF ranks Bama's offensive line, and I know that you just talked about some of the inconsistencies they have. They definitely have inconsistencies when it comes to stopping a pass rush. But PFF grades their offensive line as 8th in run blocking, and a lot of that has to do with inside zone. Milroe has been hitting explosives with his hot read, 5th in pass EPA. Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, Jermaine Burton are all over 2 yards per route run. Milroe, believe it or not, 17 big-time throws, 10 touchdowns on the season, 0 interceptions on throws beyond 20 yards. LSU does not have.
I don't think he even has any turnover-worthy throws on those either.
LSU does not have a single. I talked about Terrion Arnold and Malachi Moore being highly graded in slot corner coverage for Alabama. LSU doesn't have a single safety or cornerback in the top 200 of PFF grading. So to me, this comes down to who can defend inside zone better. It's Alabama. who can defend the slot coverage better, especially with Malik Neighbors. That's Alabama. I'm going to play Alabama. By the way, I got a big special teams advantage here too. So maybe that comes into play with punts and field position, whatever, but I'm going to back Alabama here.
I hope Alabama rolls, gets their revenge, and I can back my Cats as double-digit dogs at home next week in a good spot, because I think Kentucky matches up pretty well.
But if LSU wins, I have to go out in the backyard and pull up that LSU national championship ticket I bought last January. See if it's got some legs.
No, so you're covering all your bases here. Alabama bet, and then you can bring out, if they lose, if that loses, you can bring out your LSU ticket, dig it up out of the ground. Should be a good one and a great atmosphere. Before we get to the final marquee game of the day, it's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's the most revolutionary ball trimmer the world has ever seen. Gentlemen, our friends over at Manscaped have been working night and day to bring you a below-the-waist grooming experience like none other with their brand new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. We're talking about a next-generation trimmer with interchangeable blade heads for whatever shave your mind can imagine. Upgrade your grooming game to the Ultrasphere this year by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with code BBOC. Again, that's manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with code BBOC. AI is cool, but I think this might be the biggest technological advancement the world has seen in the past decade. High tech for low places. That's Manscaped. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code BBOC at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code BBOC at manscaped.com. I can promise you've never seen a ball trimmer look like a spaceship. Get yours today from our folks at Manscaped. I can honestly say I didn't look at that read beforehand. Was not expecting to say that. That was funny. All right. Let's move on to our last marquee game of the day. Got some, it's good at the same time, prime time. USC will host Washington. I have some bad news, people. I played USC.
So did I.
I went back to my roots last week, and we back to the USC fade train, and it worked. They almost lost. I swore them off. All I've been doing is fading them. I remember our USC caller, but I'm going back to them here. Played 3.5, would still play +3. So when I break this game down, there's a couple things that I see. I mean, look, the Washington offense, which isn't in the best rhythm right now. You have injuries to McMillan, a couple other receivers, so you just have your two stud receivers on the outside, Penix, but there's just holes in this offense. You can't run the ball at all. I mean, you're talking 13 carries for 13 yards against Arizona State, 30 carries for 90 yards against Stanford's run D. Can't run it. They don't really run it anyway, but when they try, they can't. Interior offensive line, major issues. So you can, get pressure up the middle, throw off that offense, and they can't run it. So the USC defense, it's a decent enough secondary, and they have some pass rushers. They can't stop the run at all. They can't tackle. It's a horrendous run day. I mean, Washington hasn't been able to run it against anybody, not even Stanford, and they don't run it. So it's not the worst matchup for the USC D. Is Washington going to score a lot? Yes. The total is 78. Of course. It's the USC defense. Washington's going to put up a share of points. But the USC might be able to get a couple sacks or just in coverage, a couple tips, and this Washington offense hasn't been in great rhythm. My biggest concern for Washington is on the other side of the ball in defense. This defense, the difference between Washington and some of the other elite programs, they don't have depth on defense. And one of their best defensive linemen, Tooley, he's been out for a month. We'll see if he goes. Most importantly, they lost a trio of safeties. Asa Turner, I've mentioned them in the past. Cam Fab and Vince Nunnally, I don't know if any of them are going to go. And once you're starting to get down to, your third and fourth string safety on the other side of Dom Hampton, who's not great in coverage, it's dicey. And the defense has really suffered. You saw it last week. They allowed 500 yards to Stanford. They could have lost that game. Week before, they should have lost to Arizona State if Arizona State had a kicker. Should have lost to Oregon, gave up 600 yards. If not for Oregon going 0 for 3 on fourth down. What is the narrative if Washington lost that game? They lost Arizona State as they should have. I mean, this line, It's just crazy to me. This bend don't break Washington defense with these injuries. It's just sent this unit into a tailspin. USC still, by most metrics, is like the number one offense in the country. They should score at will. So there's just no reason why both these teams can't match all night. So I'm going to take the 3.5 with the home team. And I think USC might actually be able to get a couple stops because Washington can't run it. And they don't really try to run it. So, and this is what the Pac-12 does. It cannibalizes itself. So it's time for Washington to go to sleep. I think the Trojans win, sadly. We're back and fight on. You agree?
I bet it with you. I'm there. I'm ashamed of myself. I don't really want to give Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams a whole bunch of love after
this better win because the voicemails will be
listen,
bad.
We're going Trojans. So I went on this little like 2 or 3 hour fact finding trip to find out what the hell's going on with Washington and their offense. Like, why are they struggling against teams they should not be struggling against? So let's look at what's happened to Washington recently. Oregon runs a 3-3-5. They switch to a 2-4-5, cover one quarters. Washington only gets 2 methodicals, but they're full of explosive drives. The problem is they allowed Oregon 70% available yards. Like, they were able to do whatever they wanted. Now we get into 2 teams they should handily beat, right? They go up against Arizona State, who's running, again, flips into a 2-4-5, runs cover 3, cover 1. Have no explosive drives. Washington has no explosive drives. They record 1 methodical. They have 4 turnovers, and their average distance to go on third downs is 8.1 yards. Why? Because they refuse to run the ball against a 2-man front. Shocking. Stanford, what do they run? A 2-4-5 with quarters and cover 3. Washington logs 0 methodicals, 3 explosive drives. They allowed Stanford 5 points per trip past the 40-yard line. So what is the moral takeaway from all of that? Teams are going 2-4-5, showing 2 down linemen, 9 guys in the back, and daring Washington to run, and they won't run. And the thing is Washington, their methodicals are gone. No more methodical drives. That is a drive that has 10 plays, at least 10 plays. They are 8th nationally in quality drives. It's the same thing. Quality, methodical drive, whatever. It's the same thing. They're 8th. You know how many methodical drives they've had in the last 2 weeks against Arizona State and Stanford? 1. You've had 24 possessions and you've had 1 methodical drive and you're top 10 in the nation. Teams are, I mean, I've heard of loading the box. This is the opposite of loading the box. And Washington just doesn't care. We're just going to keep throwing into it. So
and then on third and longs, teams are bringing pressure up the middle because their interior offensive line has been so bad. And that's hard to sustain. And then you see the depth because they also miss McMillan now, like giving them the 3-headed monster. It's just hard to – 2 things. It's hard to keep getting third and longs. And then if they get down to the red zone, there's going to be more issues now because you can't run it. You're in third and long. So that's USC's path, I think. Like a couple third and longs, you either get pressure, you break up a pass, and then in the red zone, you force a couple field goals. It's not going to take many stops or different. It just might be a couple field goals to win this game. Like that's it. Like both these offenses should move the ball.
Yeah. I mean, I went and looked at USC's personnel on defense. Wouldn't you know it? They run a pretty heavy amount of 2-3-6 and 2-4-5 personnel. That's bad. That's exactly what Arizona State and Stanford did to make it so close. That's similar to Stanford. Cover 1. That's similar to Arizona State. I mean, Washington is due. I guess I'll give Caleb Williams some love. It looks like he's back on track the last 2 games, no matter what the results are on the scoreboard. He has 8 big-time throws and only 2 turnover-worthy plays in the last 2 games. So at least – I don't know what he's playing for, right? But at least that's there. So USC's going to win. It's a huge,
and you're playing undefeated Washington.
Yeah.
So I think that he might be more willing to use his legs. By the way, speaking of red zone and methodical drives, USC should be able to run at will.
Yeah.
Like Lloyd should have average 7 yards a carry here.
Which means we should be taking the under, but yeah.
I'm not taking, no.
No, we're not.
I'm not taking USC and a USC under. I'm already tortured enough, but I don't mind the under. You have to have everything go right to get over 78, but no thanks.
Hey, anybody?
Cal USC was 50-49.
Somebody call in with a single game parlay on USC in the under, and if it cashes, I mean that's got to be worth some merch, right? I mean, come on, who
yes.
is? Whew.
Send that over. We'll get you some merch if you call into the voicemail. Yeah. So, all right, we're both on USC. What could possibly go wrong? But it should be a fun one. Both those games at night are going to be really fun to watch. Before we jump into rapid fire, reminder that the NBA season is officially tipped off. So if you like betting the NBA, be sure to check out Buckets, Action Network's basketball betting podcast with new episodes every single weekday this NBA season. That name again is Buckets, available wherever you like to listen. All right, let's get to rapid fire. Let's start off with my Hogs. I love my Hogs this week. +6. I saw you were afraid of the Sunbelt Billy second half adjustments and getting out coached. You went first half. I'll let you talk about that in a sec. But look, this is an amazing spot for Arkansas. You fired Dan Enos. You're going to make some offensive changes. I think Rocket Sanders is going to play. Is he going to play?
Yes.
Yeah, Rocket Sanders is back. That'll give the run game that has had no life some juice. Florida's coming off that Georgia loss. Big physical game. Don't have their top linebacker. And what's being overshadowed by the Arkansas, they've lost 6 in a row. And some of their offensive ineptitude under Enos. Now you get an element of surprise, 2 weeks to work on it. You get your maybe the number 1 back in next year's draft taken. You get him back healthy. But the defense has been really good. Like really, really good. But no one talks about it because they've been losing games and the offense has been bad. But I mean, look, they've lost 6 in a row. 5 were by 1 possession against the top 5 hardest schedule in the country. And they lost that in fluky fashion, 1 possession losses to BYU and Mississippi State, despite outgaining those opponents by, they actually held both those opponents to under 500 combined yards. Defense was fine, a little fluky in both. But they lost on the road against LSU by 1 score, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Like, this team's been right there on the road with a ridiculous schedule. So I expect them to come out with a spirit effort because guess what? Pittman's coaching for his job. The bye is still, the bowl eligibility is still in play. Because look at the rest of their schedule. The rest of their schedule, they win this game, all home games and winnable home games. So I think that they're going to come out after the bye with a rejuvenated offense that'll have some new looks that Florida's not prepared for. The defense has been good all year. I expect the defense to show up. And, Florida, after the Georgia game, they go to LSU next week, sandwichy, noon kick. This is a sleepy spot for them. And my boy, Sam Pittman, 17-7 against the spread as an underdog, 71%, 10-3 against the spread as an underdog on the road, 77%. My Hogs. Let's roll.
Well, it's rapid fire, so I'll keep it quick here. If Arkansas is going to win this game, cover this spread, then they're obviously going to have to win the first half. And, Kenny Guyton's going to take over play calling from the now departed, fired Dan Enos. And there's just going to be a huge difference. We're going to roll back those Kendall Briles schemes. In 2023, they've been running 33% of 12. They're going to roll that back to 5% like they did last year. The RPO is going to get a boost by about 10%. Passing routes, there's been no crossers this year. There's going to be a ton of them this year. There's less slants this year. We're going to get that back. But it really all comes down to KJ Jefferson running RPO and the fact that last year, his release time was 1.5 to 1.75 seconds. It was his highest success rate, his highest NFL rating. This year, 2 to 3.25 seconds is his release time, and his NFL rating has been under 80. You're going to see Arkansas completely speeded up, 29 seconds per play. That's going to come back down to Briles' level of 23 seconds per play. Less bulkier personnel, faster offense, more KJ running RPO. It's going to work. Now, my problem is that it's not Sunbelt Billy that I'm worried about. It's Florida's defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong, against interim OC Kenny Guyton. Guyton's been the wide receivers coach here since 2021. He knows the Briles system. He's, the one that personally coached Treylon Burks. But he's never called plays in his life. I can't imagine Arkansas, who is just Guyton and Pittman in that locker room at halftime, is making huge adjustments. I do see Armstrong make monster adjustments. Florida has given up 4 touchdowns the entire season in the third quarter. That worries me. So if Arkansas is going to win this and they're going to cover this like we think they are, they've never won in Gainesville before, by the way. And Arkansas is playing for pride, bowl chances, Sam Pittman's job, everything. They're going to bring it in the first half. So I'm betting Arkansas first half.
Woo pig suey. All right, let's Notre Dame at Clemson.
Oof.
I mean, everyone hated me before backing Lincoln Riley. I love Clemson here. I mean, I'm backing Dabo Sweeney. This is my nightmare. I played Clemson +3.5 and +3.
What week is this? USC, Clemson? Like, what are we going to do this on Saturday's show? Like, this is
this is bad. But this look, Clemson. They've been a mess. They're 4-4. Dabo, who's been a clown in the media over the past 3 weeks, and their team is taking a step back because of what he does in the transfer portal. Blah blah blah. And they have, but he came out and he said we would be 8-0 with fumble luck. He's not totally off base. This team isn't as good, but they lost to Florida State in overtime. They outgained them 429 to 311. By the way, Florida State is undefeated in the College Football Playoff, was a 2-point favorite at Clemson. Now Notre Dame is a 3.5 point favorite. No, please. They also lost in overtime to Miami. They lost last week. And so look, here in their 4 losses, they've gone 2 of 7 on 4th down with a -6 turnover margin, gave up 2 defensive touchdowns, had crucial missed field goals, and they've lost the most fumbles in the country. They've also been a bottom 10 offense in the red zone. Notre Dame's their defense has been very good in the red zone. Could be some regression there. Will Shipley's probably out for Clemson. It's a good thing. Give Maffa the ball more. Maffa's been way better. If you look, he's averaging 6 yards per carry, Shipley 4.6. 1.5 more yards per carry after contact for Maffa. How about explosiveness? Breakaway run rate, Maffa 60%, Shipley 33%. I don't know why they keep giving Shipley the ball, especially in the red zone. So I think that's just giving Maffa more carries. Maffa's also a better pass blocker. So Maffa, more snaps is a good thing for the offense. Meanwhile, Notre Dame, they lost Mitchell Evans. That's big. He's been great. He leads the team in receiving yards, and he has 10 more catches than anybody else. He's done for the year. He matters. So this Notre Dame team, they just beat Pitt 58-7. They're overinflated in the market right now. This is a team that got blown out at Louisville, should have lost at Duke, and now they're laying a field goal plus at Clemson when not even Florida State did. In fact, line was wrong. Clemson should have been a small favorite, and they should have won that game. Outgained Florida State by 150, lost on missed field goals and a defensive touchdown in overtime. So regression's coming for Clemson. Just hope they haven't quit, but this number, you have to take the field goal here with the home dog and hold your nose.
Well, Dabo has a way of making people think it's me and my team against the world and everybody hates us. He likes to yell at people that call it and say, take my job if you want it. But I'm surprised you haven't mentioned the secret weapon. The secret weapon in this game is Chauncey Stuckey. He's on the staff for Notre Dame, a former player that was around in 2007. Then he went on to, I think, an acting career. He went into the ministry, kept in contact with Dabo, called Dabo in 2019. Said, do you have a position for me? And Dabo said, well, you're kind of old to be a grad assistant, but I have a video grad assistant job. So he took that in 2019. Then he referred him to Dave Aranda at Baylor. Now Tommy Rees called. He ended up at Notre Dame. Long story short, Dabo and Chauncey Stuckey text like once a week, and they keep up pretty frequently about what's going on with Notre Dame and Clemson football. So I think that there's more. I think it's easier for Dabo to handicap what he needs to defend against Notre Dame. I think it's a huge advantage for him. Maybe it's nothing, but I think it's a huge advantage because they talk all the time. But Louisville blasted.
And the Clemson defense has been fine all year. Clemson defense is still really good.
Yeah. Louisville blasted Notre Dame in standard downs and generated 5 Irish turnovers. And Notre Dame hasn't logged a single methodical drive, which I said 10 plus plays in a drive. Notre Dame hasn't logged a methodical drive against Pitt and Southern Cal. They're 37th in quality drives. They're kind of coming down in the methodicals and they're turning into all explosives. Well, I got news for everybody. Clemson's defense is top 5 in limiting both pass and rush EPA. So if Notre Dame, for some reason, can't put methodicals together against Pitt and Southern Cal's defense, and all they have is explosives, Clemson's really good at stopping that. And, Clemson's
now you don't have your star tight end either.
Don't have your star tight end. I mentioned inside zone being the big thing with LSU and Alabama. Clemson's one of the best in the nation at stopping the run inside outside zone that Audric Estime loves, averaging 4.2 yards after contact. And Hartman's been fantastic in zone coverage. He blasts quarters, but he struggles in cover one. I talked about this with Duke and NC State. I know Notre Dame wins or losses, but Hartman's worst days of the year came against Duke and NC State running cover one. Well, guess what Clemson plays? Cover one more than any other zone coverage is possibly out there. I'm with you. I'm so uncomfortable this week. I'm with you. I'm on Clemson. It's gross. Let's go.
Lincoln Riley and Dabo, we're riding with you. And Pittman. All right, let's for what it's worth, including the postseason, Dabo 14-7 against the spread as an underdog of more than a field goal, covering by 5 points per game. Speaks to that, like us against the world mentality. But I think Clemson wins the game. They get some turnover luck, some red zone regression, and they win. All right, let's go super rapid fire here. Texas A&M at Ole Miss. Ole Miss 3-point favorite. Lean Ole Miss. No play here for me. Anything for you?
This is an over for me all the way. Texas A&M and Ole Miss. These two teams are going to be full of havoc, sacks, tackles for loss, cheap field position. I don't see either quarterback having any kind of advantage throwing downfield. There's going to be a lot of extra points scored that weren't supposed to be there because of failed drives, because of fumbles, interceptions, all that whatnot. So give me the over here in Texas A&M Ole Miss.
Undefeated James Madison, 8-0, heads to 6-2. Georgia State in a big game in the Sun Belt. Jamie, 5.5-point favorite over under 54.5. You know, I show a little bit of value on Georgia State, but Georgia State, the handicap there is they need to be able to run it, and you can't run it on JMU.
Right.
So matchup wise, no thanks. Because of the number, can't play JMU. If I got 7+ on Georgia State, I'd probably still play them, but not a good matchup for Georgia State. What do you see here?
I think James Madison wins by 3 or 4. You're right. Georgia State's 59% run rate, all inside zone with Marcus Carroll. James Madison's one of the highest success rates against the rush, against inside zone. They've seen a boatload of it on their schedule. Also, Georgia State's 4th in the nation in rush explosives. Well, James Madison's 1st in defending rush explosives. So Danny Granger's going to be asked to throw into 3-3-5 coverage. It's not going to go well. When you go to the other side of the ball, James Madison's offense, they're terrible at running the ball. They're going to ask Jordan McLeod to pass against a really poor Georgia State secondary. And Georgia State doesn't produce any kind of pass rush. But, I mean, it's not like Jordan McLeod is going to be able to get any drives or scoring going. JMU is 101st in finishing drives, 111th in red zone TD percentage. I like the under 55 is very key, under 55.
James Madison allowing 1.6 yards per carry. That leads the nation. No one else is under.
And won't be in a bowl.
Insane. Let's go to the Pac-12. Oregon State, 13.5-point favorites at Colorado. Should be able to run right down Colorado's throat. Can Colorado take advantage of Oregon State secondary? Possibly. The only thing I'm worried about here is Oregon State kind of had their dreams of the Pac-12 and other things ruined last week, as I said would happen against the juggernaut that is Arizona. So do they show up here? Colorado will definitely be hyped. What do you see?
I make this 9. I've been wanting to bet Colorado all week. I mean, they looked very buttoned up after the bye week. They played before the bye. They played in 3 straight 1-possession games before they covered against UCLA. They forced 4 UCLA turnovers, and it's the best standard downs game they've had of the year. That's where it gets a little misleading because they didn't run the ball very much. They ran the ball like 17 times. That's how you attack the Oregon State defense, is running the ball, but Colorado doesn't do that. Shedeur Sanders had his lowest average depth of target of the year against UCLA, 5.7 yards, I think it was, but he's throwing behind the line of scrimmage to 12 different targets, I think it was. So it's really not a fit of how you beat Oregon State versus what Colorado does. But what I do know is that Shedeur Sanders is on point with his passes. They're 4th and on target. They've become actually pretty efficient, more efficient than they were the first 4 games of the season. I think Colorado can give them a little bit of a scare here. You're right. Can Oregon State just bull them over? I have not seen, there's no explosiveness in this Beavers rush anymore. I think they're 89th in EPA on the ground. And then back on, the other side of the ball, Oregon State's defense is 127th in tackling per PFF. But if you go to Sports Info Solutions and look at broken tackles allowed, Oregon State's 131st. I think Colorado can hang around here. I projected 8.5. I'll take the 13.
One last one. My Arizona Wildcats. Are we betting them again? Of course. All I do is bet Arizona every single week in the Pac-12. And guess what? All they do is cover. When is the market going to realize this team is good? All they are is 7-1 against the spread, 5-0 against the spread as an underdog, covering. You know what Arizona as an underdog this year? 5-0 against the spread, covering by 17 points per game. And this team is so good, it's ridiculous, and they get no respect. They've lost 2 games in overtime. One at Mississippi State should have won, had bad turnover luck, and should have won at USC. Their only other loss by 7 against a healthy Washington team. That's it. Jed Fish doing an amazing job. He's going to get a new job soon. Enjoy him while you can down in Tucson. Arizona could be 6-1, maybe 7-0 with a couple breaks. Like in the discussion for the Pac-12 and college football playoff. Delora, he got hurt. Noah Fafita has come in. He's basically Delora without turnovers. He's been the Pac-12 freshman of the week 3 times. He's made 4 starts, all against top 20 teams. He's completing 75% of his passes. He has 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. This offense is so well balanced. The pass blocking is excellent. They got a deep backfield of explosive runners. They rank 3rd in rush success rate. They have 2 great receivers on the outside, and McMillan and Cowing. This team's so good. And then on their defense, when I break this down, 2 really good rushing attacks, 2 really good rush defense. Like, people aren't talking about Arizona's run D. I mean, they're like top 20 in every metric. I don't think either team's going to get much on the ground based on the matchup. What does it come down to? Whose passing attack do I trust more? Garbers and UCLA or Arizona? I'm taking the +3. I think Arizona wins this game again. I'm on a broken record here. And look, UCLA has played 2 road league games against Utah and Oregon State, and those went pretty poorly. Since 2005, by the way, this is an Arizona thing. No team in college football more profitable as a home dog against ranked opponents than Arizona. 18-6-1 against the spread, covering by 10 points per game. 2-0 this season. Bear down.
I shoved money in while you were going through it because this is a rapid fire segment. I will say this. Colorado had no way to protect Shedeur Sanders. You already mentioned it. Arizona, #1 in the nation per PFF in pass blocking. They are going to be able to protect Fafita. So I am with you. I shoved money on Arizona +3. Let's go ahead and get it.
All right, before we get to some trash, bowl season and college hoop season are right around the corner. So we know things are going to get even busier, but we can't let that stop us from being the best version of ourselves. That's where our friends at Caldera Lab come in. 1 minute in the morning and 1 minute at night can be all the difference you need for clearer, better skin. Their easy routine keeps us looking fresh no matter our schedule. It's just 3 steps. 1, the clean slate. That's the face wash. 2, the base layer. That's the daily moisturizer. And 3, the good, the nightly eye serum I absolutely love. So join over 100,000 men who trust Caldera Lab to show their best selves this bowl season. And just for our listeners, we have an exclusive deal. Use code BBOC at calderalab.com for 20% off right now. That's 20% off with code BBOC at calderalab.com. Make unforgettable impressions with Caldera Lab. All right, let's get to some trash. Let's start off with a 2-6 South Carolina team laying over 2 touchdowns against the 7-2 Jack State team. Yes, we're laying it. South Carolina, 2-6, all 6 losses against opponents that were ranked at one point this year. Jacksonville State's wins, UTEP, ETSU, Eastern Michigan, Sam Houston State, Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky, and Florida International. That's their 7 wins. Not a single team I have inside the top 100. They were catching this number at Coastal, and they didn't cover. They didn't even cover. I have South Carolina 7 points better than Coastal. This is a get-right game for South Carolina. Huge strength of schedule discrepancy. South Carolina, #1, hardest schedule in the country. I just mentioned their 6 losses against ranked teams. Only 1 came at home. Jacksonville State, 133. It's bad. South Carolina also bad luck. They have 1 fumble recovery this year. Opponents are 14 of 19 on 4th down. And South Carolina's only 6 of 17. Jacksonville State can't take advantage of this South Carolina secondary. Rattler should shred, has healthier weapons now. Sam Houston State threw for 300 yards against Jacksonville State. And Jacksonville State uses tempo, which you don't want as a big dog on the road in the SEC. Jacksonville State also playing for a conference title. They could sit guys, rest up. They have an easy schedule this way. They could pull guys earlier. Cox roll in a battle of Cox. It's a cockfight here. You agree?
100% agree. I think strength of schedule is the biggest factor here. You mentioned the point spread that Jacksonville State's had against other teams. This is an easy one that we'll probably bring up later in the show that you got before I did in a certain segment.
By the way, I think South Carolina's still fighting. They can still go to a bowl. They win out, win this game. Then you have home games against Vandy, Kentucky, and Clemson.
Hey, it's the month of November. This is when Spencer Rattler makes his money, right?
Yep. Let's stay with we're going to fade. This trash can be filled with Conference USA schedule fades. La Tech catching 17 against the 8-0 Flames of Liberty. Look, Salter's been great in Chadwell's system. Here's Liberty's wins. Bowling Green, New Mexico State, Buffalo, FIU, Sam Houston State, Jacksonville State, Middle Tennessee, and Western Kentucky. They've played nobody. Louisiana Tech, they have yet to face top 100 team, and they barely beat Middle Tennessee. They barely beat Sam Houston State at home. Jacksonville State lost all their quarterbacks in a game that was tied at the half. Also, they've had extreme turnover luck on defense, and Louisiana Tech's been extremely unlucky on fourth downs, fumbles, you name it, across the board. They've had injuries, yet they've lost one possession games to Middle Tennessee, New Mexico State, Western Kentucky, and North Texas, even at Nebraska with Jack Turner starting. They've had injuries at running back, quarterback. Backmeyer's back. Look, Liberty's going to be able to run the ball, but this is too high. La Tech's been unlucky. New Mexico State's been lucky against a joke schedule. So yeah, give me La Tech here, catching an inflated number.
I think I have to do the math here. Liberty could probably lose out and still make the Conference USA championship game. I mean, they're 6-0. They hold tiebreak. It doesn't matter with Jacksonville State. They can't play in it. They hold a tiebreaker over New Mexico State at 4-1. They hold a tiebreaker over Western Kentucky at 2-2. La Tech here, who they're playing, is next in the standings. They're 2-3 in conference. I think Liberty, who I don't expect to lose this game outright, could lose out and still play in the championship game. So, unload the benches, get the guys that have red shirts so you can play for 4 games, get them in there. I'm not saying Liberty's a fade train, but I mean, come on. I mean, they could lose out and still make the championship game.
Yeah, they've also been extremely lucky with takeaways, and La Tech's been feisty. Like, they're in games, they just don't win them. One more Conference USA schedule fade. We're fading New Mexico State. You want to talk about a schedule? We're saving the best for last. New Mexico State, 6 wins. You want to hear their wins? Western Illinois, New Mexico, Florida International, Sam Houston State, UTEP, and La Tech in a game that La Tech should have won, outgained by 100 yards and 2 turnovers. Lost by 3. They also, by the way, New Mexico State also has losses to UMass and Hawaii. This team, if you go by Sagarin, which ranks FCS teams, you know where New Mexico State's schedule is? Strength of schedule? 157. Nichols State has a tougher schedule. The next toughest in all of FBS, 137. Their schedule's been a joke. By the way, opposite Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee, national average strength of schedule. They played Alabama and Missouri to start the year. Got beat up. They've also played all the top dogs in the conference. And by the way, they lost by 4 at Missouri. They lost 1 possession at Liberty, which those results look better by the day. So, look, they're 0-3 in 1 possession games. They've been bad variance in terms of red zone turnovers, late down on defense, because their early downs have been good. So, Middle Tennessee State's been feistier. They've also had 17 days to prepare for this game. And if they win this game, they're probably going to go bowling. They have FIU, UTEP, and Sam Houston left because they already played all the top teams. Stockstill, for what it's worth, 5-0 against the spread with 2 weeks more to prepare for a game. Pavia has some turnovers coming. This New Mexico State team's terrible. I have Middle Tennessee State better on a neutral. 17 days off here. Huge strength of schedule disparity. Middle Tennessee wins.
I am not joining you here. I get it with Rick Stockstill being good off of a bye week. If you look how long he's been at Middle Tennessee State, but Diego Pavia, he's not dead, is he? He's playing in this game, right? And Middle Tennessee is like bottom 15 in the nation defending the run, right? I mean, I can't join you on this. Plus, this is a number I make like 7.5. I think SP Plus makes this 9. This number is crazy. 3?
I make Middle Tennessee State 1. Middle Tennessee State wins.
I'll watch. I'll spectate if you get it.
This New Mexico State team's a fraud. Last one. This is against you on your favorite section. You're crazy. You could try to make the case. Army, they're catching 18.5 in a game of 31. The score, projected score is 24-7. You just need the Army to score 1 touchdown. By the way, even if Army doesn't score a touchdown, probably still cover. The Army's run D hasn't been good. It doesn't matter. Navy's run D was the same metrics as Army. They know how to defend the triple option. You know what Air Force did against Navy's bad run D? ran for 2.7 yards per carry, even though they averaged 6 the rest of their games. Army knows how to defend the triple option. Army's quarterback's now healthy. This is a team that lost by 3 at BC. They lost in the last minute to La Monroe. I think you're getting them low here. But it's 18.5 in a battle of service academies with the new clock rules. This game could end 14-0. I mean, Navy covered for me. They had 40 yards the whole game before the last drive with a backup quarterback. 40 yards. There's a chance that this game ends 13-0. Air Force, by the way, clown schedule. They're 8-0, great. They beat Robert Morris, Sam Houston, Utah State, San Diego State, San Jose State, Wyoming, Navy, and Colorado State in a blizzard. And by the way, all those teams are bad against the run. They haven't played anyone that knows how to defend that triple option. And they've been pretty fortunate with some weather backup quarterbacks. I mean, last week statistically, they should have lost to Colorado State. Colorado State had 5 drives, 250 yards, ended with 6 points. The turnovers, 0 for 3 on 4th downs. And in the blizzard, air raid versus the triple option in a blizzard. And Colorado State actually outplayed Air Force, which was very unlucky in that game. I mean, look, they even got a snowball penalty. Did you see that? They got a snowball penalty.
Saw the snowball penalty.
It's triple option team. Service Academy game, 18.5, total of 31. No brainer. I'll let you wait for your thoughts on the favorite because you're actually taking the favorite here. You're crazy. But anyway,
I changed it. The option that I wanted was not there, so I went into this.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me take that back.
I'm changing it. I'm changing it because I've got Sam Houston fatigue from Air Force.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yes, you're changing your favorite. I'm so happy you did. All right, before we go 3 and out, Colin, 20-second cap on. You've been hot on these. San Diego State, Utah State, over or under?
Under. I don't see a lot of points being scored here. Blake Anderson, by the way, has covered just 1 game out of his past 7 off of a bye week. Brady Hoke has had 3 straight covers off a bye as San Diego State coach. He's covered 6 of the last 9, dating back to his days at Michigan. And Jalen Maiden hasn't created a missed tackle since week 4 against Boise. So we'll see if the bye week helps him out a little bit. San Diego State is 18th nationally in creating broken tackles, and Utah State is 107th in broken tackles allowed. So I love San Diego State to win this game outright as an underdog. I don't know who deemed that Utah State should be on the road and favored over teams. I get how bad SDSU has been. We're going to go under. Minimal amount of points here. That Nevada game was so bad. But we're going to take San Diego State to win outright too.
All right, before we get out of here, let's go 3 and out. All right, let's start off first down Friday Night Lights. We have BC at Syracuse. Syracuse 3-point favorite. I wish I was getting a little more of BC. I'd play them. Syracuse is a corpse right now, but I'll just be rooting for BC for the win total. The line, big adjustment for what BC has done lately and what Syracuse has done, complete fading away. Just have no depth. This happens every year. Wyoming 6-point favorite over Colorado State. I don't think I have anything as of now. Keep an eye on the app. Do you anything here for you?
No, I mean, I can't, even though the number for Syracuse is completely off where I think it should be, they're lifeless. I took them last week against Virginia Tech. They have nothing left in the tank. They can still make a bowl. They're coming home to play. They had 3 blowouts, got into the bye, showed up against Virginia Tech, and they were completely lifeless. So I am definitely not going to get behind Syracuse here in this spot. As far as Colorado State and Wyoming, really, it's all about the explosives. Can Colorado State generate enough against the Wyoming defense? It's generally pretty good at home at stopping that. But when you look at EPA on these 2 teams, Wyoming's outside the top 100 against pass explosives. That is not a good look whatsoever. Plus coverage outside the top 50 per PFF. They do stop the big play. They're not very good at stopping the pass. And that's what you have to do against Colorado State. They don't generate any havoc either. So steam on Colorado State is real.
All right, let's move on to second down, and let's go with our favorite overdog. That's our favorite. I already mentioned this earlier, South Carolina. This is a get-right spot. Just huge talent in this match as well. South Carolina's had the toughest schedule in the country. 6 losses to ranked teams. Been unlucky on 4th downs, turnovers. This is a good matchup for them as well. And Jacksonville State uses tempo. Not what you want with a big dog. South Carolina, Spencer Rattler are going to have plenty of opportunities to run this up in a get-right game. Jacksonville State also might just rest some guys. They have bigger aspirations, and they're just overmatched here. Give me the home cocks in the battle of the Gamecocks. Where are you going, Colin?
Well, we need another West Virginia win to get over the season win total that we took at plus money on the 5. I think they're going to pull it off here. Neil Brown's going to save his job. I can't believe the Mountaineers have done so well this season. And now they get a BYU team that is dying for the season to end. It's not gone well for Kalani Sitake in his first year in the Big 12. But more importantly, when you take on West Virginia, you have to be prepared to defend the run. Mountaineers run at about 64% behind a brutal rushing attack that can be really tough on other teams. And when you look at the metrics for BYU, it's just not there whatsoever. These are even strength of schedules here between these two teams, but BYU is 97th in defensive stuff rate.
Their front stinks. Their defensive
line yards. It's bad. West Virginia is going to have a field day here. Bowl season right around the corner, and West Virginia is going to be a part of it. There's going to be a blowout here.
Yeah, BYU has been a complete fraud all year with some fraudulent wins, and West Virginia, tough spot. Their second straight road game, and West Virginia should be able to run wild here. Before we close things out, let's go with our moneyline underdog parlay. I already mentioned mine earlier. You thought I was crazy. Well, I think you're crazy. Middle Tennessee is going to Las Cruces and winning this game and keeping their bowl hopes alive against the fraudulent New Mexico State team. Where are you going? You're also going Conference USA.
Look, I switched the helmets up. We definitely have enough exposure to Conference USA after a whole month of watching them on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. We know these teams better than we ever have in the history of the podcast, but I switched the helmets up behind me. We moved Minor Nation over. I expect to hear some calls on the voicemail this week. Listen, Western Kentucky is a team that I have been disgusted with the entire season, especially on defense. It has fallen off a map, near dead last.
Can't stop a nosebleed.
Can't stop a nosebleed. The defense is so bad. They're so bad at havoc. They're bad against the run, but more importantly, they're almost worse in the nation at allowing explosive plays. What does UTEP do? It doesn't matter who their quarterback is, whether it's Gavin Hardison or their backup. They are top 25 in the nation and completing pass explosives. I expect them to do that to Western Kentucky all day. Western Kentucky cannot stop anybody in the red zone, anybody at midfield at no point. And that offensive attack just has not had the teeth lately. They're good in the red zone, but they're just not having any kind of success rate moving the chains. It's all about EPA with Western Kentucky. UTEP's going to be able to throw a little bit of a kink into that. So I love Minor Nation this week. Rise up. Let's get that win out right.
Yeah, I have them circle for my round robin too. So like this. So Conference USA money line underdog parlay. Throw that in. Make sure you, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe, like it really helps us out. Just do it. Just hit it. I know you didn't. And 10:30 a.m. Eastern Saturday, BBOC Live. We will have our round robin and cover all the marquee games with myself, Colin, and Brett McMurphy. But thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe. Leave a review, 5-star review. We'll do giveaways on the recap show on Sunday. Yell, cry, scream about us betting Clemson and USC. Oh, God, they both don't cover. The voicemail's going to get blown up, 959, bad beat. But thanks for tuning in. Make sure you check out the Group of Five guys. Also, every Wednesday, new BCS, which is on YouTube and on this podcast channel. Make sure you check that out. And then again, we'll have the recap episode. And then we'll be back for week 11. Crazy. Enjoy the amazing slate. Let's have another winning weekend. And we will see you on Saturday. Cheers.
Peace out.